My name is Cecelia Wambach. I'm a long-term member of Beyt Tikkun, and I am honored to be speaking in our Synagogue Without Walls, our Zoom synagogue. It has been wonderful praying and celebrating with you these past few days. Like some of you, I was not raised in the Jewish tradition, and so everything I know and love about Judaism comes from Beyt Tikkun, the House of Healing. Rabbi Michael Lerner and all the speakers over the years have been my teachers. I'm here today to tell you about my work with refugees and immigrants. I will start with my own story, and I will weave in some pieces that have inspired me, then introduce you to some of the people I have met on the way. We will look around the globe at some of the refugees. These dear people are the result of many wars, poverty, hunger, violence, lack of opportunity, homelessness, unclean water, conditions most of us have never experienced. There are almost 30 million global refugees. Spirituality is central to my life. I am part of the oneness, the unity of all beings. Just like you, I am not separate from God, but I am part of the cosmic consciousness that is God. We all are. I honor the sacred in each of you. Judaism has taught me so much that I hold in my heart and that sustains me. I love the principle of Tikkun Olam, healing the earth. Let me tell you what Tikkun Olam means for me. I retired from being a math education professor at San Francisco State University when I was in my mid-60s. It had been a glorious ride. I love the university and my students. They were all pre-service teachers. We talked together about the role of teachers and what a privilege it was to teach and to help children shape their lives. During my work life, I felt that I was a big part of transforming the earth. When I retired, the world seemed meaningless. I realized how much I had gotten personally from my role as a teacher. I began looking for something more. Then I began to notice that every time I turned on the television, there were refugees moving across the screen, people who were running for their lives. It was 1941 all over again. This was my family struggling to get from Eastern Europe to Uruguay. I started to learn everything I could about what was going on. At one point, I remember screaming out, "Does everyone else see what I'm seeing on the news each evening? These people need help. I have to go there." 3 others joined me. We went to Lesbos, an island in Greece, to work with a group called Dirty Girls of Lesbos. Their work was to gather the abandoned clothing from the shore, launder it, and recycle it back to the other hundreds of people who were arriving daily. We also spent some time pulling people out of the water who had made their way across the sea in flimsy rubber rafts. Eventually, we began cooking in the camps. While in the camps, we saw the absolute desolate face of the people. We saw that the children had nothing to do. We connected with Save the Children, and the next day we began to set up small schools in the camps, literally on the ground, on blankets with small groups of children. We bought plastic tables and chairs for our outdoor classrooms, and eventually we merited trailers. We did not speak the same languages as the children, but everything seemed to work. We made math counters out of the foam cut from some substandard life jackets. We played bingo to teach the numbers. We sang songs in English. Eventually, one of my colleagues sent us other materials, pattern blocks, geometry and number manipulatives, paints and markers. We were doing what we could. The kids were happy and they were learning. They loved their pencils. They loved their pencils with the little sharpeners. They loved their simple school and they loved us. We loved them. It was a great big love feast. Many of them had been traveling all their lives and they had never been in school. They loved their school. We stayed for a month and then we had to leave. Once home, we talked about how this experience had changed us. This Tikkun Olam caravan had carried us into the journey of our lives. We wanted others to come and help. We began to recruit retired teachers, and soon we were bringing activity and learning to the children. We were teaching all of the school subjects, plus computer, guitar, game playing, and even knitting. We established a girls' empowerment program to teach swimming and bicycling to girls. We lugged books and other materials onto the plane, creating a small library of teaching tools. We began teaching English to the parents. We became a 501c3 and called ourselves REAL, Refugee Education and Learning. We did this with our own money. We were volunteers. We became colleagues with other groups from all over the world doing this same work. By 2020, we had recruited almost 200 volunteers, mostly retired teachers, to come to Greece to help us. COVID didn't stop us, but we had to change direction. With the help of National Geographic Foundation, we generated a home base in Lesbos, stocked with computers. The refugees would come to our center, get online, and meet with their live teachers in the United States. Currently, although we are back to Greece and to refugee camps in other countries, we have English-speaking volunteers from many places in the world teaching refugee students online who have now asylum in European countries. And we are teaching newly arrived refugee adults here in the Bay Area from Mexico, South America, and the Ukraine. I taught a family from Yemen, 2 adults and 2 teenage daughters. I met with them every Tuesday and Friday morning online during the pandemic. I felt like I was their lifeline. I was teaching them English, but really I was their connection to the outside non-refugee world. Omar, the father, had been a successful international salesperson when his life fell apart. The conflict and economic decline left him without a job, and the family home was bombed. His oldest son was killed. They could not get food and there was no medical care. Their town was demolished. Omar was fortunate to have connections and he got his wife and his daughters out, but he never expected to end up in a tent in Lesbos for over 3 years. Yemen is in a civil war, as are many of the African nations. It began in 2015 as a result of clashes between Yemeni government forces and the Houthis, also known as Ansar Allah. Over the past 7 years, conflict and economic decline have forced millions to leave. Even before the war, Yemen ranked among the world's worst in malnutrition rates, and half its population was living in poverty without access to safe water. I have another image of Yemen. A few years ago, I attended an outside event in Vermont put on by Bread and Puppet Theater. Yemen was a beautiful, huge puppet, 30 feet tall, moving slowly, her hands raised in blessing. 20 to 30 puppeteers were bringing her to life and moving her across the stage, which was the side of a mountain. She was an elegant Black woman, a Mother Earth. Strains of Yemenis music created a mood of grandeur. Then other groups of puppets rammed her. They were poverty, hunger, US bombs, violence, disease. The music changed into staccato rhythms. The people of the world were turning against Yemen. Gradually, stately, beautiful Yemen topples and falls. It is a moment of inner reckoning, an amazingly powerful theater piece. For me, art, like this bread and puppet theater piece, helps me to grapple with what's going on so that I assimilate this into my understanding of the world. It inspires me to continue on. When I think about Yemen, it is every place in the world. All the bombed out cities, the piles of rubble, the displaced people look the same to me. And when I think about war, I think of the millions of young men, all my sons and your sons, who we have set out to kill one another. Have I done this? Yes, I have, because I have looked the other way. And then I think about all the people, the refugees, running, hiding, hiking through forest, climbing into makeshift boats to go across the sea, running away from home and the lives they once knew. We are seeing it now on television in the Ukraine. It is hard to watch, but if you notice, our visual images are getting easier to bear emotionlessly. Somehow we are getting used to seeing parents running with a dead child in their arms, their neighbors following after them. I cannot stop all those wars, and I cannot stop the military aid and arms that the United States sells to 65 countries all over the world. But I can speak up. I can talk about what I know. I can ask questions to become more informed, like Rabbi Lerner spoke about this morning. This is one of the biggest dilemmas I have in my life. Should we intervene or not? My mind immediately goes to World War II, and I am confused about our participation in the war machine, which produces the refugees. And there are other complexities. So many. There are over 29 million refugees globally, and half of them are children. Can you imagine this? 15 million children are going to bed hungry each night, living in fear, not knowing what is coming next. I cannot help but contrasting them to my own grandchildren's wonderful lives. And contrary to what we have learned, 85% of the refugees are being housed in developing countries. Those countries who have their own issues and problems are taking them in. Which countries are these? Turkey, Iran, Jordan, Bangladesh, the Sudan, Lebanon, Uganda and Pakistan, Colombia, South America. Recently, Germany has made it to this list. I speak occasionally on the phone to one of my former students, Safa, a refugee from Syria. Her children have lived over the past 6 years in Syria, Afghanistan, Turkey, and Greece. When they heard they were being sent back to Turkey, they made their way illegally to Germany. I know many people who have done this. For some reason, if they're successful in getting there, it works. Safa's family may stay for 2 years. They have a place to live, and they receive a small cash allotment each month. But there is a catch. They have to learn to speak German over the next 2 years. Safa's children speak Farsi, Arabic, Greek, and English fluently, and they are now learning German. Let's look at Syria. Syria has been the main country of origin for refugees for the past 10 years. Safa and her family are part of this group. They left because of the killings. This is not our country anymore, Safa cries. You can't live when there's a war going on. Everything is in chaos, she tells me. There is no schooling or childhood. The children have nightmares. Your friends go missing or are killed. My husband was afraid for the children's future. It is better for me to live in this rat-infested tent than in a country that is having a war. But I still wonder if we did the right thing. My oldest son continues to have nightmares. You probably remember the protest against the young President Assad in Syria. At first, the people were shocked that he and their government fired on its citizens. What began as peaceful gatherings calling for more freedom and dignity quickly escalated into a full-scale war between the Syrian government, backed by Russia and Iran, and anti-government rebel groups backed by the United States, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and others in the region. It has continued on for 11 years. The news has lost interest in this war and its ongoing complications. It is our war. It is a war between our weapons and Russia's weapons. Who can sell the most? Where else in the world do they need our killing machines? Why are we participating? Should we be a part of this? In 2019, more than 2/3 of all refugees came from just 5 countries: Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and Myanmar. Now in 2022, we see what is happening in the Ukraine. African nations are experiencing civil war, famine, disease, lack of jobs, and clean water. Among them, the Congo, Nigeria, and Somalia. My way of healing the earth can become an ally to these refugees. I can listen to the mothers. I can encourage the fathers to learn to fish. I can teach English to the families. I can listen to their stories once they are able to trust me. And I have been able to do all of that. I can suggest to others that they come with me. I am asking you now, would you like to come with me to a refugee camp? What can you do to help? It is a new year. It is a time to change your life. From 2016 to 2020, I took 9 trips to Greece for months at a time. I am so grateful. One particularly vulnerable group with whom I worked were the unaccompanied minors. I know and taught and fell in love with hundreds of these courageous children and youth over the years who came by themselves. We do not ask questions about why they left home. We know that some of them lost whole family and watched the killings of their parents. One of my children, Josephat, from the Congo, lost her mother on the journey and has never found her. She is one of the fortunate ones now living in England with a foster mother, and the young families in their 20s traveling with babies and young children. You would be amazed by them. Most of the refugees with whom I have worked are the beautiful people of Afghanistan and the African nations. There are so many of these people that I hold in my heart and in my memory. Ali Reza, the loving father of 4 daughters from Afghanistan. Ilhan, 15, a bright young woman from Somalia, stranded now in a refugee camp in Thessalonica, in charge of her 3 younger brothers, unknown parents. Joseph, 16, from the Ivory Coast, who was put on an escape truck to France by his grandmother so that he wouldn't be captured by the boy soldiers. He ended on a boat to Lesbos after being sex trafficked in Turkey. Parisa, 16-year-old from Afghanistan who lost her eye when hit with shrapnel, now studying in a private school in Europe. Her tuition is being paid by our scholarship fund from Rio. These are our children. Our children. They are part of the unity of all being, the cosmic consciousness that is God. Let us take a moment to bless them and one another. I would like to end by telling a happy story. Sometimes I would teach English by singing songs. I had a splendid song, one with so many lovely vocabulary words. I will sing it for you. You know it. We sing it in the synagogue. Yud He Vav He, compassion and tenderness, patience, forbearance, kindness, awareness, bearing love from age to age, lifting guilt and mistakes, and making us free. My many Muslim students love this. They sang it with full throat. They learned the meaning of each word. The Orthodox, Buddhist, and Hindus loved it. It became our song. We formed a tight circle and sang it. They claimed it by singing it differently. Allah, Allah, compassion and tenderness, patience, forbearance, kindness, awareness. We are all part of the oneness, the unity of all beings. We are one in the spirit. We are part of the cosmic consciousness. Yud He Vav He, Adonai, Allah, the Christ, the Holy One, Shekinah, God. We are all being called to heal the earth, to Tikkun Olam. I know many of you here have answered that call. For the others, imagine with me now. Imagine that you are being called to be part of renewing the earth. I have called you by your name. You are mine, the God of the Torah invites us. What will you do? How will you embark upon the journey of Tikkun Olam?